So in this video, we are going to talk about why changing your partner or trying to change them will never improve your relationship. And some really simple steps that you can take, I'll share at the end of this video for what you can do instead. If you're not feeling happy or not feeling 100% fulfilled, there are some steps we can take to adapt the dynamic in the relationship without trying to change this person and who they are. So stick around to the end and you'll find that part out. I want to start off by saying that we try to change our partners because we are trying to change how they make us feel and how life makes us feel. It's sort of like how we want to change the world because if we're really honest with ourselves, we're actually trying to change how the world makes us feel. It's essentially all an attempt to control our own emotional state. If I can change my outside world, I can change the way it's going to make me feel in my inside world. And it does really, sort of beg the question of, well, why not just do the inside job first and then bring that improved state out into our external world? And I find that to be a much more effective way of approaching things, quite honestly. But we're not here to cover that in this video. We're here to talk about these three major reasons why changing your partner doesn't usually work as a long-term relationship strategy, and how we can pivot in our attempt to improve our relationship and try some different things. So the very first reason is because the dating stage is meant to be the vetting stage of a relationship. When we're first getting to know somebody, the dating stage is meant for us to ask those tough questions, work through the differences, have discussions and conversations to make sure that we are aligned. And often what I find ends up happening for a lot of people, and it's totally okay if this is you, like don't beat yourself up for this at all, but it's so common for people to kind of jump into a relationship because they haven't defined their standards for what they want first. So instead, they'll get into a relationship because they find somebody attractive and they have fun with them and there's a good, chemistry and connection. And they'll say, okay, this is it. This is the person I want to be with. And what we're not sometimes doing ahead of time is recognizing, well, what are my own non-negotiables in a relationship? What are the things that I'm never going to be okay with? And this might look like, dating somebody who wants to live in a different part of the world than you do. This may look like being in some sort of position where you want kids and somebody else doesn't want kids. This may look like having really different views on the world, philosophies, political views. Who knows what it could be for you? But we have different non-negotiables for things. And sometimes what happens is couples come together without sorting those things out first, or in that first 6 months of dating and getting to know each other. And then they try to change the other person the whole time. And the more we try to change somebody, especially if they are really deeply rooted in their point of view, their perspectives, their opinions, the more resistance we will often see creep into the relationship, and the more resentment we will often see. And really trying to change somebody can sort of act like this poison in the relationship dynamic as a result of this. Number two is that when we look through the different stages of relationships, and I often mention them, right? We have the dating stage, the honeymoon stage, then we have the power struggle stage. And it is an inevitable stage that all relationships will go through. And one of the key ingredients to actually overcoming the power struggle stage of a relationship is learning to accept our partner in their flaws. It's allowing our partner to feel safe in the relationship, being seen for who they are and showing up authentically as themselves. And that is what we also need as individuals. This is a two-way street between ourselves and others. If we feel like we can let our guard down with somebody, if we feel like we can be accepted for who we are and seen for who we are and understood as our authentic selves, and we can express our authenticity to a partner, this is actually what allows us to move into the sort of graduate from the power struggle stage, if you will, and move into the stability, commitment, and bliss stages of the relationship. And so without the acceptance, when we're constantly hammering at trying to change somebody, this is where we are likely to see problems and challenges arise that will often lead to the demise of a relationship in that power struggle stage. And number three, nobody likes to be changed. If I'm trying to change you all the time, it almost represents the absence of love, right? And I can empower you, but I don't have to try to change you all the time. So let me give you an example of the difference here for number three, and then we'll talk about what to do instead. If you have a child, okay, and the child comes home from school and they were bullied, and the child's crying, right? It may be like we're trying to change the child if we say, well, stop doing the stuff that they're bullying you for and you won't get bullied. Or, oh, stop crying so much. You're being so sensitive. Like we're trying to change the child in that moment. And instead of doing that, where we're trying to change how the child expresses themselves at their core or what their characteristics are that are getting them bullied at school, instead of doing that, we can support and we can communicate. And I'm going to really dive into this in a lot of steps in a moment with what we can do instead of trying to change our partner. But in this analogy here, if we come to the child, we sit with the child's feelings, we're present with the child, and we say, "Hey, honey, I'm so sorry you're upset. Are you okay? Tell me about it. What's going on?" And if we can get the child to express themselves and share, and then we can talk about, the child's strengths and the things that we fundamentally see about the child that are beautiful, that are worthy of love, that are incredible. And then we help them come up with some supportive strategies for what they need to feel better. This is us, really coming from a place of love, not the absence of love, right? And there's a huge difference. If we say to the child, "You know what? I'm so sorry to hear that you were bullied. That must feel terrible. And, you're strong. Look at these beautiful characteristics you have here, here, and here, like ABC, right?" You can insert them if you can imagine what you would say, right? And then if you say, "Okay, let's talk about what we can do about this. Let's solve this problem so that you can feel safe at school, so that you can feel like you're not worrying about this happening again. Let's brainstorm what we can do." If you're speaking from this space, this is you seeing the child, supporting the child, empathizing with the child and being able to move in a different directions. If you're not doing that, trying to change somebody is like this absence of love and absence of empathy for who they are and what they're experiencing. So what do we do instead? Well, we can kind of use that analogy of a child in a way, but what I find is that we don't have to change somebody at their core or try to tell them why they need to change or why they need to be different. We need to instead communicate vulnerably how their behaviors or patterns affect us and talk about what we could need instead in that kind of situation. So I'll give you an example. When I was first dating my husband, I had a little bit of fearful avoidant attachment style left in me. And this is like, oh, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. And we were getting to know each other, and I had done a lot of work. I had a lot of healing to do beyond just my attachment style. And I had done a lot of personal work, but I hadn't done a lot of attachment style work just yet. And honestly, part of dating him like brought me more into that realm after being in more of like the subconscious mind, core wounds, needs kind of realm before. And he had a lot of dismissive avoidant in his attachment style. And he would do this thing when I'd come home from work and I'd have a busy day and I'd be working with clients all day. And so he was doing this thing like a year into our relationship. We started living together like a year and a half in or so. And um, he would be like kind of dismissive. Like if he was in the middle of something, I'd be like, "Hey, how was your day?" Wanting to be present. And he would be dismissive. And I noticed this inclination I had within me to want to be like, "That's a horrible behavior. That's rude," or to like judge it or criticize it. That, like, "Hey, I'm coming home. We haven't seen each other all day, and I'm trying to be open and present. And you're like not turning away from your computer because you're doing something." And it feels rejecting. It's funny because I like go to speak in the vulnerable way now because I'm used to doing it this way. But so at first I like noticed myself wanting to criticize the behavior and be like, "Who does that?" Or like, and to feel frustrated or be like, "Hey, that's rude," and to judge it, right? And instead, what I work to do is like understand it for him. So I'm not taking it personally and communicate what it lands as for me. So I had this conversation one day and I said, "Hey, I want to chat with you about something. It might seem small to you, but for me, it kind of lands in a painful way and it actually feels quite rejecting." And it's that sometimes when I come home from work, I notice the past couple weeks since we've been living together that like you're in the middle of something and often you won't peel your eyes away from the computer. Often you won't turn around and like be present for a minute. And that really doesn't feel good for me because I'm looking to connect and it feels kind of like this rejection. And it makes me feel this need to kind of pull away from you after. It makes me feel this need to like, "Okay, you don't want to talk and be present. I'm just going to go into the other room and do my own thing then. And I'm just not going to really engage either." And it was, this, and I was expressing that, "Hey, this is what's coming up for me." And I said, "I want to let you know that I would appreciate if you could find something that would work for you that would allow you to commit to trying to be more present or be more just aware of this sort of dynamic as I come in." And so instead of being like, you are this way at your core, or you are this person. And there's a huge difference, right, between trying to change the person as their character versus trying to alert somebody to a behavior that's hurtful. And that's a really important theme of this video, by the way, that I forgot to mention, right? Changing the person at their character, saying, you're this way versus their behavior, and communicating about how it affects you. And so I said, what would work for you? Like if you're in the middle of something, is it better if I just take space and then you can come in and you can be present with me when you're ready? And he was like, no, I didn't even realize I was doing that. And I'm so sorry. I feel like that would feel really bad. And I'm going to work on it. And if you can just do me a favor and let me know if I'm doing it in case I don't notice it, that would really help me out. And just like gently let me know, hey, you're doing the thing where you're not present, or hey, I need you to be present right now. And over the course of the next little bit of our relationship, I'd say the next year or so, he would do a really good job and really make an effort, but sometimes he would forget. And instead of shaming and instead of giving it a hard time, I'd be like, hey, I need your presence when you're ready. Or, I just need you to be present when you have a chance. Or I'll go into the other room, come let me know when you're ready to be present. All sorts of variations of this. And you fast forward like 8 or so years later, and something I'm so grateful for about my husband is that like sometimes I'll walk by his office in our house on the way to the laundry room, and he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, did I ignore you? Did you talk to me?" And I like won't have even tried to talk to him. I'll be doing something, and he's very sensitive to it. So instead of trying to tell somebody how they should be different, instead of trying to tell somebody what they need to do differently or what's not good, or instead of criticizing or judging, when instead we can say, hey, this isn't the person, this is just a behavior, it's not who they are, I'm not going to judge them as a whole thing overall. And I'm going to pair that with openly communicating and vulnerably communicating how that behavior impacts me and what it feels like. And then I'm going to ask them what they can commit to like to recognize how this impacts me, right? To come to a healthy compromise. I'm not changing the person. I'm leaving room for them to grow with the understanding of how that can impact my feelings. And when people care for a relationship, they're going to take that next step and want to grow and want to improve that. And so it's a really healthy way of communicating, being vulnerable, being empathetic, and also being genuine and authentic with how something is affecting you. So these are some big things that I thought were important to touch on. And I could give so many other examples of this, whether it's in other people's relationships or things like that, but hopefully that really summarizes it for you and makes sense. If you want to do a really deep dive into like all of this kind of work, I have a whole course all about conflict communication and how we can structure things so that people want to grow with us, so that people want to bridge that gap and show up and do this work together. And it tends to be very strengthening for a relationship. And the course is called, I forget the beginning of it, but it says like conflict communication in the title. If you just search it, I'll put the link down below so you don't even have to search it. And it goes through all sorts of steps to do exactly that. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you're enjoying this channel, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell and the thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you in future videos.